All right, we're going to see how the ensemble oscillator can produce both bass and chords. We're going to start with just the bass, hearing just the bass. You ready? All right, so what's going on here is that the A output of the ensemble oscillator is going into the in1 of the quad VCA. And the ensemble oscillator is set up so that out A gets the bass and out B gets everything else. And that's a function on the ensemble. It's the stereo mode function. And so all the chords are going through out B into beads, but we're not hearing those yet. And we have Pam's playing the bass through two different outputs, one of which is very regular on the downbeats, and the other of which is somewhat random, playing eighth notes. And both of those are going into a logic with an OR gate, so that we hear all the downbeats as well as the irregular upbeats. And that's going into a slew, which is going into the CV of the quad VCA. And that's how we're getting our bass part. All right. And so now we're going to have some chords on the upbeats. So I am essentially using beads as a poor man's VCA here. It's possible I could have just patched ensemble out B right into the VCA and gotten a similar effect, but instead I decided to patch it into beads. We have Pam's going into the seed here rhythmically on the offbeats. And so we only hear the output of beads when that offbeat gate goes into seed. And I've got the settings set up so we have this envelope, the one that has a very short attack and a little more of a decay. And I have beads in the mode where it only plays when it gets the input into the seed jack. All right. I didn't mention pitch. Pitch is coming from my key step. I have a little sequence into the key step, and this key step is being clocked by Pam's, and the pitch out from the key step is going into the pitch in of the ensemble. The ensemble scale is set to a major triad, and so we hear the bass note out of out A, and we hear the major triads out of out B. Let's hear that again. Now I'm gonna bring in some melody from rings. So rings is basically just being played by Pams here. We've got one output of Pams controlling the pitch, and it's set to a pentatonic scale quantize. We have another pair of outputs controlling the strum. And the reason for the pair of outputs is to give us that drum sound. Well, I don't have a drum voice in this rack. I don't have a drum voice in this rack, so I'm using rings as my drum voice. And so the way that I'm doing that is I have these beats that I want a kind of a snare sound on. I've got those beats going to the quad VCA CV4 from Pams, which is essentially VCAing some white noise from the noise tools. And so that white noise is basically only passed through on those beats where I want the snare. And when those happen, the white noise gets patched into the frequency modulation of the rings. And when you patch white noise into frequency modulation of rings, you get noise out of rings. And so just on those particular beats where I want the snare, rings get super noisy instead of melodic. And that gives me a little drum. And then I'm once again using an OR logic so that I can make sure that those upbeats always happen in addition to all of the other notes that I want rings to be playing. Thanks for listening.